All right, hello. So today is going to be a multi-part video on making the assets for the abandoned mansion. And with the other videos that I made, the grass and the landscape and the trees, those are all assets for the abandoned mansion. But these are the building assets. So it's a little bit of a different concept. To start with, I'm going to talk about the modular components. So how one creates modular components for a scene in Unreal. You create mostly everything inside of Maya, and then you export the individual components to go into Unreal. And this is how we did it with Republic Commando, how I did the assets for like the assault ship um, and like the detention level, things like that. Um, but when we first were told about how to create the that we needed to think modularly, it didn't make much sense because everything in video games we had worked on was all just the whole level, just right there, or a different room or something. So it was a lot of different, a lot of bigger pieces together. So to conceptualize the idea of modular components, they're very, very handy because um, you can then take these individual components, put them together, make bigger scenes that you may not have intended in the first place, and so you have a lot of flexibility once you're in Unreal to create a new bigger scene. The only thing is that it takes a little bit of pre-planning and some kind of creative, imaginative problem-solving skills in order to create these modular components. Um, so when you look at a scene, something like this, the best thing that you can do is to ask yourself what is a repeating element. So probably the first most obvious thing that you can think of that is repeated are the little lamps. So all of these guys are all the same. They could all be repeated. Um, and then usually the other thing that you see are the window pieces. So these window pieces, you could have one side and then the other side, or you can just do each one of them separately, and you can just have a little window piece that you just keep placing. You'll notice that there's a little piece right in the middle that has like a door in it. That could also be its own piece, even though a piece might only be used once. Other things that you might notice is the swimming pool. So the swimming pool, you can see that it has these 5 elements. You can cut these guys up like that, and that could be one element. You could have the back piece or the side piece over here be one element. You could also have a piece over here and then mirror it. However, this is a good thing to mention. If you mirror a piece, the problem is with textures. You can often see when a piece is mirrored. It kind of like the inside of it almost when it connects together looks a little bit like a Rorschach test. So that symmetry is kind of very obvious to the viewer. The ways to get around that is you can have a piece over here and a piece over here, and then you can have a middle piece. So this way, like on the other side, you could have the exact same thing, although it would have to go down a little bit here because the other side is the deep end. You could have that other piece, and if you wanted to make the pool bigger, you would just add more of these middle pieces. Other things that we can see are here with the window and the columns. So you could create an individual column and you could create a window, or you could also just cut the column in half, and then you can contain everything within that one piece. So we have 1, 2, it's duplicated there, 3, 4, it's duplicated there. Other things like this piece over here can be duplicated. but you'll notice that there's the signs here that are a little bit different. This is no biggie because you can just create it without the signs, and then you can put a polygon over it with the sign on it. If it's painted onto the wall, that's also very easy because you can then use something called a decal, and a decal is just like a projected image that can still have like a normal map on it, so you can still see some bump on it. This is particularly good for cracks, things like that. Also, a decal would be great up here, so you can see these little guys. If we were to cut the ceiling, we could cut the ceiling here, 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 like that, and then this whole area right up there. Let's give it a different color so you can see. So the ceiling might be cut up there, and this piece over here is mirrored, and then like I had mentioned before, you can have this inner piece. You just have to make sure that either you have a seam that goes along these areas, so a very obvious seam, or you have it so that it wraps or is seamless, and it goes from one texture to the next. Excuse me. So there's that. Then there's another spot over here. These guys can be repeated. And then we also have the little grates. Those kinds of things also are repeatable. And things like this over here. Let's look at another reference. Here's another good reference of a scene that could be created in Unreal. Firstly, the ground, things like these little rocks, etc. This could all be done by a combination of the foliage scattering, and it also could be done by decals. So we could put a lot of this dirt as a decal so that it makes the ground a lot more organic and lifelike. Other individual things that we might see, we see the chandeliers. We have these little guys here, these heating elements. This is a separate one. That could be something. The chairs. These are all little elements. Then if we look at the ceiling, you'll notice that there's kind of a seam that goes straight down here. We can make the middle part its individual piece. Then these little guys over here, you'll notice that we have the columns, and then we have these little alcoves. So this also can be cut like right in the middle and can go down a little bit like that. So this right here is all one piece. Also, the alcoves are the same like over here, except this one is open and this one has a window. So the window itself can be its own piece. Some of them have curtains, some have plywood, and then over here we have the little a little balcony kind of thing. This can be added as a piece of its own. Of course, it goes back in there, so you'd have to have some other pieces to hold those together. Things like this over here, these are all things that could be done with another, with a decal. This could be done with a decal, and some of these other guys over here. It's nice to use decals because this way, with a texture that is dirty, you won't see a lot of repetition, because the decal breaks up that repetition that might automatically exist in the texture that you've created. We also have these little guys in the back. These are both the same. So that's and we also have the carpets. The carpets, this one is cut, and then this one back here is not cut. So we could either make just two individual carpets, each one as their own object, or one important thing to be aware of is that we do have a little bit of artistic license. So the artistic license can create a little bit more order, so that and then we'll be using fewer assets. Too much order, and then it doesn't look as chaotic as something like this, because we want to present that chaos. and and the story that's behind this static environment. Let's look at, so we looked at that one, and here's a good one. So this one is a really good example of a lot of repeated objects. And this also is a good example for how much do you get away with repeating something. So we could have these two windows could be the same in our world, or we could have two different kinds of broken windows. But to start with, there's like a door piece down here. That's its own little thing, and we'd have the whole bottom area, including the cement. This one here is kind of an original piece because it has just a window, a single square window. But these guys up here would all be repeated. And you'll notice that we have this top piece there, and then we have this little kind of like dental over here. And that can be something that can be added to delineate between the different pieces. You'll also notice this goes between over the window. And in order to make this a little bit more in line with the modular components, we could just put that, right over the window, so we don't have to create something totally unique. We can put this little dental over there on top there as well. And then we have repeated elements like this itself could be repeated down here, down here, down here. We could even not even put this square little tiny thing. We could put this long one right down there. Some of the windows we could have be broken. The other thing too is that we could just have the piece here of the building, and then just have a bunch of modular components of different windows. Like we could have probably 4 different windows, and then just plop them in or leave them out. Like over here, there's nothing in there. And then also with decals, you'll notice that we have all this stuff here that can be added and give a little bit of bump, so we can have some various decals that can come through and add a little variation. Decals can also be used for graffiti, so all these little guys easily created. Even if you're just using using it once, it's still very useful to put in there. Then let's look at these other pieces. So here we have this little kind of overhang, curved overhang, and this one you'll notice is similar over here. So we can have these pieces here that could all be repeated. Although this one has the curved element to it. So what we could do is we can still have these guys repeated. We could probably have this thing stick out so that we could still use this square piece. These guys over here, you can't really utilize these too much unless you just had the individual windows, but we'd want to have, we can repeat certainly this part of the building. And then of course we have the foliage going over there. We have trees. That's all Unreal stuff. So that's a good example. Then the last one is the mansion. So this is what we're going to do. Palace Luboszyce, I think is what it's called. It's in Poland. Really interesting place. Not a whole lot of pictures inside, so we're not going to do anything inside. That'll also be a little bit more advanced. But here you can see that we have a lot of repeated elements, and some of it we're going to simplify in order to make it modular. If we look outside of the building, the first thing we can see is there's this little parking block like thing. That's a big one. Then we have the smaller ones, and the smaller ones all can be the same, which is what I've done. I've just had this little small parking block, and then I duplicated over here and over here, and this one over here and over there, and also over there. Then let's look at the columns. So we have this column here. That's kind of a small column. We have a medium column, And you can see that this one's different because it doesn't have these little grooves at the top, and it also doesn't have the squarish kind of base to it. So here is our medium column, and here is our big column. And you also can theorize that that this would also exist off of the picture. And you would be correct. It does exist in many other areas. Then the other most obvious thing are the windows. So this is an interesting, nice puzzle, as we have this kind of window shape like that. So if we simplify it a little bit, we can use this window for all of these windows here except for the middle part. You'll notice over here it has a curve on the top, and we can include that if we were doing the rest of the mansion, which we're not doing in this example, but we'll just keep that one a square one for now. So with this one, we can also duplicate it up here. However, you'll notice that up here the bottom of the window goes straight to the top of this dentil. So what we'll end up doing is we'll put the dentil, or put the window piece behind the whole thing and just pull it down just a little bit so that we don't have to create a new piece. And then we have to make sure that we have enough room up here. We may even, we'll bring it up just a little bit so it goes to the top of that dentil, so that we can have a little bit more space up there. Then we'll also have a basement piece, and the reason why we need a basement piece separate is because we don't want it sitting behind this thing up here, so we want to be able to separate that. Then we'll also have dentals, so we have this little tooth dental here, the smaller toothed one, and then we'll have the bigger dental, which is up here. And the dental will be just the size of each of these individual window pieces. So there's that. Then the other issue is that there's not really a whole lot that we can take apart here, except if we were looking on the back of the mansion, and then you could see some similarities. So with this middle piece, it's basically going to be its own piece. We're just going to make this whole middle piece all of its own, but we will make the steps, though, separate. We'll just have 3 steps, and on the inside there's a little alcove to the front door that's going to be fun to make, and that'll be another part. And we're already working on the landscape, and we can see some trees. So let's jump right in and see what we can do with the object. So if we go to Maya, you can see I've already started making this piece, and this is the piece that we're going to end up with just for this first part. So we have a top part and we have the basement part. So I often, and it could be lazy, but I often just start with a reference character. This is the Unreal character exported. He may come into your scene a lot bigger, and I think he did. So I often like to make him 100 times smaller. So I change the scale to 0.01. And the reason for this is I want to see this grid. The grid is often helpful just in placement and knowing where you are in 3D space. So let's jump right in and start making it. We're going to eyeball a lot of stuff. It's as an environment artist, a lot is just eyeballing things and just playing off of that. So we'll start with just making a cube. I have to not use my pop-up window because the resolution on this monitor is only 1080p. So I make a cube, and like we did with the foliage, we're just going to delete all the back faces, just like that. So I went into face mode and deleted all the back faces, and go back in object mode, and there we are with just that front face. So first I'm going to do is I'm going to bring it on top of the grid, and to do that I go to modify, center pivot, I hold D down to change the center point, I hold V down for vert snap, and I grab on this y-axis and I just aim it down there. If you aimed it and it went down to one of these guys, you probably clicked right on the actual vert. So you want to click on the axis so that you can sample the y value in this vert over here. Then I'm going to hold down X for the for grid snap and just aim it right at the center. So we're at 0, 0, 0. Then I'll bring the guy back. Press F so I can focus in a little. Bring the guy back and just gonna make it a little bit bigger. And we also want it a little bit bigger underneath because we want it to go into the ground so that we can have some elevation change. Because if we have the elevation go down, you might see underneath the building, and you don't want that to happen. As for scale of our object, let's look at this guy. So the scale of the character from pictures that I've seen, they actually end up just kind of, you know, standing right about over here. Hey, what's up? So if they're standing over there, when they go over here, you can see that we have a lower ground. So they'll end up, you'd probably end up with his head probably right around over here. I want to get in. Which is good for like for privacy in the building if it was actually inhabited. No, go away! I don't want you to come in. Okay, a little punchy. So, anyways, we can see that. So it'll be about that size. Let's go back to Maya, and we could probably make it a little bit taller in the middle of the head. And so that is the start, and we're kind of blocking out the basement, blocking out this whole scene. So I'm going to show you some real basic, like hard surface modeling techniques. And to do this, we deal a lot with faces and verts and edges and extrusions and cutting using multi-cut. And a lot of snapping of verts and merging verts, and also don't forget to delete your history. So we'll start by, and you'll notice that it's a little different from what I had before. It's a little bit, there's not enough really down below for my taste if we were putting into the scene. So I'm going to change my mind about that. We press Control E, and we could either grab this and move it up, or one of the things you can do with a kind of hard surface modeling habit is you can move, not that one. You can click and hold on any of these guys. So you'll notice that it changes the icon of the mouse as I hover over it. So here I'm just going to click and move it straight up, and I'll probably move it to, let's see how that looks. That looks pretty good. So 3.5 for that. So here is the beginning of our whole piece. Now what we want to do is do the most obvious elements of the scene, which is put the windows in. So I'll go into face, click on the face, and again we're going to use extrusion. So you might wonder, well, where are we extruding it to? I'm not going to extrude it out or anything like that, but if you press extrude, you can do a 2D extrusion. And you can also do a 2D bevel, which we'll see later on. And here we'll click and we'll move offset off to the right, and you'll see that now I have added a face right in the middle of it. Here I'm going to press R so that I can scale this window, so it'll be a little bit more like the basement window like I want. I'll probably bring it to about where I think the width of the window is ultimately going to be, because it's nice to have it be kind of similar in size to that, to the window above it. Again, I'm going to press Control E to extrude it out, and wrong one. And then I'm going to move it in with the local translate Z, and that looks about good. And so it's inside. Then I'll go into edge mode. I'll grab this top piece, move it down, and then I'm still in edge mode. I'll double click on this edge loop around here, and you'll see it has the whole edge loop. And we're also going to make this not in super high poly, but it's going to be kind of a modest poly. Now here we're going to bevel this. So I hold down Shift and the right mouse button, bring up the context menu, and go to Bevel Edge. One of the other things about hard surface modeling is you can change things very with a drastic number, or you can hold down Control to get more control of the situation. And holding down Control, you can control a lot finer. So here I'll probably make it about like that for that bevel. You'll notice also that the bottom of it is flat. So to fix that, I'm going to go into face mode and press W, and I just click on that one face down there, hold down V, and grab onto this top axis, and I can snap the whole face down to these little verts over here. So you can see that it's now snapped right down to that spot. All right, so that's the basic shape of our basement window. Now we're going to do the top window, and this one we're going to do another extrusion. We're going to click offset, and we'll bring this in, and we'll get a window, something like that. And then I'll go into edge mode with F10. I'll grab this top edge, and I'll just bring it down. Looks about good. Okay, so the next step is doing the inside of this window. And the inside of the window has some, if you look at the references, let me bring up the references here. You can see a little bit, this isn't really too clear, so I have to load up another one. It kind of goes in a little bit, then it and comes back out, goes in a little bit, has another little open like extrusion inward, and then goes in to the window pane itself. So one sec. Okay, so if I look at the mansion references, and this is the Lubushice mansion, and then cool. Why is it not? Oh, I see. Alright, so here we are looking at the references, and we can see a lot closer to the building. So we can see a little closer what's going on here with the windows. Not too well yet, but you can also see some really nice detail in some of these other images. That's a little bit better, but that's the back of the house, and that one has little grates. That would be something that we would add to it. That's a little closer. Still not the best. There, I think that'll do it. Okay, so we can see here on the right side that there's also a flat kind of thing that comes down where so that the rain doesn't kind of accumulate, but it comes kind of goes from the outside, it goes in a little bit, and then it goes in there, it comes in here, and then it goes down like so. So it's a lot of different ways that we could make this. We'll make a lot of this as stone, and then these cross pieces we'll make these as dried paint, and so the cross pieces will kind of go into the stone a little bit, but that's all right. All right, so if we were to look at let's look at our thing in Photoshop. So if we were to like make a side view of what we think the window would look like, we'd have this front window here, or the wall, and this is zoomed in. Then it would come in a little bit, it would go back out, it would go in, it would be pulled in a little bit, and then it would go into the building again, and this is where we'd have the window come in, just like that. So let's go with this one as the goal. And it's good to have this on another window so that you can be aware of what your plan is. Another monitor, that is. Oops. Okay. So for this, we're going to start again with our extrusion, and we'll go Control E, and we'll do an offset with this so that it goes straight in. We could, scale it in, but offset will give us a little bit more exactitude. And of course, you hold down Control, and I'm going to do it at about 0.03. So with that, then I'm going to hold down Control, and I'm going to push it in just a little bit, another 0.3. So what I just did was I extruded it in at 0.03 and then pulled it into the building at about -0.03. So with this, I'm going to do another extrusion. I'm going to do another offset at 0.03, and I'm going to bring it back into the outside at 0.03. So now we have kind of a little frame going on there. And I was holding down Control to get that exactitude. Then another extrusion. This one I'm going to hold down Control again, 0.03, and this one I'm going to bring it into the building a little bit, 0.08. Another extrusion, Control E, Control, and then bring this in at about, let's try to keep consistent with 0.03, and another extrusion, and 0.03, and then this one is going to go finally into our building at about 0.08. So if we look at our window now, we can see that we have some nice little detail going on there, but this doesn't have the nice little lip that goes down for the rain. So the one thing we want to do is we want to bring this little piece down just a little bit so we have just kind of a flattish kind of surface. So for this, we're going to use multi-cut, and we'll go Control Shift X and click on this vert and just click down here. It doesn't really matter, we're just eyeballing that little spot down there, and then we'll go over here and do the same thing. So you might wonder, and W to get out of the tool, why are we being so eyebally with the whole thing? And that's because we can go back here and be more accurate, hold down V, and we can just aim it right there with the holding on to that one axis, and then we're straight down. And then we click on that, hold down V, and we aim it over there. So the reason for this is that we don't want to have a little tiny sliver of an object, of a face, just sitting out there. So we could delete it, or we could just snap it down, but I'll show you that when I delete it and I snap it down, we still have that vert that we cut. What we'll do is we'll grab this, and then we'll hold down V, vert snap it down, grab this one, V, vert snap it down, and now we have a little bit of a nice nice thing going on there. We could also take this, bring it down a little bit more, and this way we could have a really nice ledge. So it's that's pretty straight, so better than the one that I had done over there. And I always say that you know, if you redo something, oftentimes it'll get better. Um, so that is our window over there. We are in object mode. Let's merge our verts at 0.005 tolerance. Let's delete our history and F8 a couple times. So the next thing that we're going to do, I think, would be to make this little bit of detail on the front there. So this is going to come in handy a lot throughout the thing because it's going to be a repeating detail. We could duplicate this, snap it over here, and rotate it at like a 90-degree angle. And you'll notice that when I zoom in, that there's a little bit of a gap, but when we bring it through like that and bring it in, now we have a really neat example of architecture, and I don't know what the term is, but it has a nice little edge that's over there, and we're going to do more of that with the building. That'll be a nice little touch. So for this, I'm going to move this guy just a little forward so I can see what I'm doing. Then I'm going to separate the bottom and the top. So I just go into face mode, select those bottom faces, and then go to Edit Mesh. Okay, it's not going to show it. Edit Mesh and Extract. So we have a lot of stuff going on here. We could, you know, do some crazy offset stuff, but it'd just destroy it. That would also destroy it. So we're not going to do that. We're just going to press W and click off of it, and now we'll have our object separated. Then we'll take the edge mode and we'll click on the top edge and we'll move it down a little. And I usually start from the top, even though I'm going to have to separate it, but it just makes a little bit more sense. And let's look and see what kind of a reference we have for that the top doodad. So it looks, if we simplify it down just a little bit, it would look like, here's our basement, and here's our window up here, the wall over there. So it looks like it comes out, goes in, comes out, goes in. Oops. Okay. I should have made it a separate piece. Well, that's unusual. Alright, we're not going to worry about it. So, brush, so it comes out like that, and then it'll come back in, and then it'll go down. So this is too far in, too far out. So it'll look like this, comes out, goes back in, but not fully in. It's a little bit out because we want to be able to have this so it can, if we want to pull it down and change the location of the window, bring it in a little bit, we can still do that. And out like that, down, there, and then I'll go there. Okay. So easy enough, just a whole bunch of extrusions. And this one we can do our offset, or we can just easily just go over here and grab the middle pieces here. Grab the middle piece there. Not totally fully in. Control E again. Let's pull it down here a little. But let's move it, and W, and move it down just a little. I'm going to actually give it a little bit of a curve. And move it down. Control E, W, and move it in. Alright, so that's where I want this guy to sit. So for this, I'm going to hold down D and V, aim it at that corner, and then just snap it. Oops, wrong spot. DV over there, snap it right there. So now we have our basement piece put together. So this was only just one extrusion, 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 and then just snapping them together. It's not super... There's one thing that I do on here that's kind of nice. Didn't know I modeled it like that. We could curve this one face over here a little bit, and we can do that by beveling it. So if I just click on that edge, shift, right mouse button, hold down control, and I can choose a different bevel there. There, I like that better. That just cut it up into separate pieces. Okay, so now we have our little doodad. Let's make our window. So the window, I'm going to, how's the best way to do this? I'm going to actually separate this piece off of the object. You might wonder, well, you just made it before. Well, yeah, but sometimes I do this so fast I don't even know what I'm doing. So I separated that using edit mesh and extract. And then after that, we'll click on that. Let's bring it forward a little bit so we can separate it. And let's also make it a little bit bigger, because what we're going to do is we're going to end up bringing it into our window, but it's going to kind of cut through just a little bit. There we go. All right. And then we're going to make these guys. So if we look at our reference, we can see that they're all pretty evenly sized. But they have kind of this little cross beam thing here going on. So that could probably mean that this window down here, these windows could open up. So to do that, and you can also see that this has a single one, and then these guys have extra, just extra reinforcement. And I sort of followed that over there. We'll see what happens when we get to it. So with this, I'm going to go into multi-cut mode. I'm going to hold down Control and Shift and just cut right in the middle. And then I'm going to cut there right in the middle. I'm going to cut there in the middle. Cut there in the middle. So now we have that exact setup. So what's really cool about this is that we're going to use that beveling that we just saw right down here. And I hold, I actually click on it first. I'm going to select these guys. And this is our little cross section. And I go to bevel edge, hold down Control, and now I have a nice bigger beveling. Then I'll grab onto these little dudes and I'll make a smaller bevel. Just like that. And so that's the basic setup. Remember, if your gizmo is in the way, just press Q and it will no longer be obfuscated. Yeah, or it will no longer block any of the polygons underneath it. And here, I'm going to press Control E and Control and bring this out just a little bit. So this is our basic, and then I'll bring it in a little. This is our basic window frame. I don't know what they're called. But we want to also do a little bit of extra for these guys. So here, I'm going to press Control E again, and then I'm going to bring these guys, bring that in a little, and then push it out just a little. So here you can see that the window frame now has the bigger ones and then the smaller pieces. And so if we bring this in, one sec. All right. So now our frames are all set up, but we can see that there's a little of an issue down here. It could be over there, and it definitely is up there. So we can just move this out, select our edges here. So here's a little trick that you'll definitely use later. If I select all of these verts at the top and I deselect one, I can make all of them snap straight to this y-axis. But we have to make sure there's a setting in the Move tool that will allow us to do that. So I double click on the Move tool and I come up with the Move tool settings, and then I expand Move Snap Settings. And in general, you want to keep this off, or at least I always do. It may need to be on for other situations, but for what we're doing here, in general, it's good to keep retained component spacing turned off. So with that, I hold down V for Vert Snap. I click and hold on this, and then I aim it right over there, and now everything is flat. I can do the same thing here, and I select just that one little set, and then I aim it right up there. That's flat. Select that, aim it up there, it's flat. And in the bottom, let's do that too. Aim it down there, and now it's flat. So let's bring that now back in. We should no longer have that issue. There. Cool. I like it. All right, so the last thing that we're going to cover today is this little doodad thing up here. So for this, there could be some other issues in terms of like shading that could come, that could be a problem, but we're going to use a Boolean on this so that everything is all nicely put together. I'm just going to create a new cube. Bring it up here. Make it smaller. So it's nicely in the center too, because we kept this also very center based. So that's about good there. And then let's bring it out a little. Bring it down. Make sure it's going outside of the thing. Let's make it a little wider. Okay. Then let's bring it in a little, because this is the detail that's over these windows over here. Now these guys connect over here, and we could make that also happen. We'd have to create a little inner piece here that would oh, funny found jokes. Inner piece. A Zen Buddhist walks up to a hot dog purveyor in New York City, Times Square, and he says, make me one with everything. So so we have we could make like a little section here, which could give a little bit of space between them, but we don't really need to do that for now. We'll figure it out when we get to it. That's kind of sometimes how the environmentalist mind works, environment modeler works. Okay, so with this one, we're going to use some symmetry, and I didn't often use symmetry. I'd often just model something, cut it in half, merge them together. But symmetry does have some really useful elements to it. I'm going to do object X. So whatever we do on this side, so if I click on the edge over there, then the other edge is also selected. So there's that edge. If I move it, you notice that it moves also. So here, I'm just going to move it in just a little bit. I'm not even going to worry about that because I know it's going to be symmetrical. And I'm going to go to face mode. I'm going to grab that face. And then I'm just going to extrude it down. So I pressed W and extrude it down. Let's see how far those go up. It goes up a little bit higher. I'm going to move this onto my second monitor. And go into, oops, why did it do that? There we are. I'm going to move it up a little. Just like that. All right, that looks good. Then I'll go into face mode. And I already had it at kind of a 45-degree angle there. So all I have to do is press Control E, then press W, and move that out just a tiny bit. And now we have our little doodads. Little decorative, non-objective shapes. Then we're going to want to pull it in just a little bit. And there's some more detail in the actual building if we were to look at it closer. But for now, I think that this is a good simplification and an artistic interpretation of what the building looks like. And with that, then let's select, we have that one selected and this one. Let's go in and go to our Booleans and see what happens. There we go. So I did a mesh Boolean union. So it looks good. If yours doesn't look like this, one of the problems is that you may have some verts that need to be merged. Booleans will get a little bit weird if you don't have merged verts. But the one thing though that can be troublesome for this is some of the extra verts that are made from it, and also the n-gons that are created out of it. So we're gonna hope that that's okay, but just for the hell of it, I'm going to fix this one little one over here and just snap it right into that corner. I think that's a good start. If we run into problems later, then we can tessellate it more. And so I snapped them, but I didn't merge them. So now I have to go into merge verts, 0.005, merge verts, F8 a couple times, delete our history, and there is our mentioned piece. Now, if we were going to export this, we'd have to add a shader to it, and with Unreal, like we could put, and we'd have to add also UVs and everything. But before we did that, we would have to take these guys here and combine them together. So combine, thank you. And then we'd have to delete our history. Then we'd have to move our center point down. Oh, forgot about one important thing. Oh dearie. We need to separate this little detail from this object. Extract. And it's separated. And we're going to connect this to the basement piece. So here, we're going to go back to Mesh, Combine, Merge our verts, delete our history. And so now that's a part of the bottom one. And this is the top one. So when you're snapping stuff in Unreal, you want to have your center point in the right spot. And also to rotate it You don't really want to have it right in the middle. You want to be able to have the pieces snap tightly together. So in general, with a piece like this, you'll want to put the center point right in the bottom corner, whichever side depends on what where you start building it off first. I'd start with with this side, and then I'd snap it over there and snap it over there, etc., etc. And then delete our history. And that's it right there. So we made that in probably about 40 minutes with a little bit of me babbling about what did I talk about? Modular components. And then eventually we'll put UVs on it, we'll put shaders on it, we'll bring it into Unreal, all that kind of jazz. But in the other videos, we're going to make other things like the dentals, we're going to make the big spires and everything like that for the whole project. So I hope that was very helpful, and see you in the next video.